Good morning. It is July 28, 2023, and this is the OSU Turfgrass Team Times. Online, we've got Dr. Tyler Carr, Dr. Xiaowei Wu, Dr. Dave Gardner, and Dr. David Shetlar. As we start to get into some of these peak summer temperatures, stress on turf has certainly increased. There has been quite a bit of rainfall, however, so I think Dr. Carr is going to touch a little bit on that. One thing we would recommend is at this time of year with the high temperatures and high stress levels, usually the less you do, the better it is, right? So trying to overcompensate is probably not going to be the smartest approach. It may be one where it's better to sit on your hands. Northeast Ohio got hit pretty heavily or badly with storms over the last 10 days, and so cleanup has been ongoing. And we've also seen a little bit of disease activity on the brown patch variety. I've not come across anything as far as problems with things like Pythium blight. On that stage, Dr. Carr, take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Nangle. Yeah, he hit the nail on the head right there. This time of year, less is more. We have been getting plenty of rainfall. That's been a good thing. We went through that stretch in May where we didn't really get any. And for the next couple of days, at least early next week, we're going to get some relief in terms of temperature. It's going to, and dew points, it's going to feel a lot more comfortable out for us. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the grass is taking a break. Our water loss rates through ET are still going to be well over 0.2 of an inch for any given day. But we've had enough rainfall where most of the state is not even listed on the drought monitor currently. If you're in Putnam County or Hamilton County or just east of the Worcester area, you're still under a little bit of a drought, but we're supposed to get some rainfall in the next couple of days and later next week. So if you're in most of the state, you can probably cut your irrigation off. I see a lot of residential irrigation running currently when I'm driving through town, and there's really no point. It's just wasting water at this time. I know Dr. Gardner is going to talk about some establishment practices or weed control for establishment, and we're going to over the next couple of weeks kind of dive into the different steps of establishment on Turf Team Times. We're also going to have some blog posts supplementing that. I'll talk about soil testing in more detail. I know I mentioned it last week. I'm going to talk about it in more detail next week. Then I know Dr. Gardner is going to hit on how we can make sure our area is prepared for seeding. And so with that, I hope to see many of you at Field Day next week. I'm looking forward to getting to meet more people in the state. So looking forward to that on Tuesday.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Dr. Gardner.
Good morning, everybody. Let me share screen. So yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about non-selective weed control for the purpose of getting ready for establishment. You may also be out now controlling annual grasses such as crabgrass and goosegrass and et cetera. I talked a little bit about that last week. Otherwise, to Dr. Carr's point, less is more. Herbicides tend to be a little bit more phytotoxic in warmer weather. And so, the only spraying that you're hopefully doing right now is, some spot spraying for annual grasses, or like I said, if you're dealing with weeds for which we don't have selective herbicides, like this guy right here. So this is quackgrass, and every now and again, I'll have somebody ask me a question, something like this: have you ever found a mixture of herbicides that resulted in selective control of quackgrass? And the easy answer is no. There was a herbicide that was registered for northern turf in the year 2007 that seemed to have some activity on quackgrass if it was dormant Kentucky bluegrass, but they decided that particular product was a little bit too phytotoxic to cool season grasses, and now it's only registered for use on southern turf. So really, when it comes to quackgrass, orchard grass, Bermuda grass, so the one that has the 4 spikes that look like this, it's blooming all over the place at the OTF Center right now, or Nimblewell. Any of these are ones that we really don't have selective herbicides for. I know that some folks will spray like mesotrione or tacramazone, and you'll get the bleaching effect. And sometimes you can even get some decrease in the aerial coverage of those weeds. But I found that that tends to be, in most cases, not either consistent or predictably reliable, or there's just too many. It's not predictable whether or not that's going to work for you. And so in most cases, if you have these types of grasses, to include rough bluegrass, then the one active ingredient that you would use to control those remains glyphosate. Okay. And you'd want to apply that about 1 to 2 weeks prior to your intended seeding date. And so we usually recommend that we establish from seed in this part of the country anytime from the middle of August to the end of September, depending on the species. And so 1 to 2 weeks prior to that seeding date. And you can also back that up a little bit so that you can make an application. And then if you accidentally don't get acceptable control with the first application, you have time to make another application prior to putting the seed down. Now, one exception to this rule of using glyphosate to control perennial grasses is creeping bentgrass. We do have another option for that. You can apply glyphosate 1 to 2 weeks prior to the seeding date, but also mesotrione is labeled for this purpose and works pretty good. You make 3 applications. Each of those applications should be 5 fluid ounces per acre. And so 3 applications total, 2 to 3 weeks apart if you're trying to manage bluegrass or tall fescue. There's a little bit more phytotoxicity with ryegrass with cereal applications. So you want to make those applications more like 3 weeks apart if you're trying to control bentgrass in perennial ryegrass. Okay. But then with the 3rd application, what you do is you apply your seed, rake in, and then apply the mesotrione, and then mulch, and then start watering. And so you want to start your applications basically 6 to 9 weeks out from when it is that you are planning, or I'm sorry, 4 to 6 weeks out from when it is that you're planning to apply the seed. So that, like I said, you're putting seed out with that 3rd application of tenacity. And what happens then is that your desired turfgrass will germinate white, bleached, and you'll be very frightened, but then it will grow out of it. Whereas none of the other weedy species that might germinate at the same time, they won't survive. It's actually really cool the way that works. But anyway, mesotrione if you're trying to control creeping bentgrass. Otherwise, for all of those other grasses that we don't have selective controls for, glyphosate remains our best option. And that's what I have for today.
Hey, Dave, I have a follow-up question. If you're planning on doing any groundwork, how would you time your non-selective application? Would you make a selective application, do groundwork, and then maybe make another? Non-selective application.
Yes. Yeah. So make the selective application, wait a few days to make sure that you get thorough translocation through all of the underground parts, then do the groundwork, and then you might observe that for a period of like a week to see if there's anything that attempts to come back, so that then you'd have time to make another application prior to your seeding date. Good question.
Thank you.
And Dave, I do have a second follow-up on top of that. As far as recommendations for timing of establishment and renovations of home lawns, normally what do we say for seeding?
We usually say August 15th to September 30th. If it's perennial ryegrass, you can go closer to September 30th. If it's Kentucky bluegrass, it takes longer to germinate. It's maybe better to put that out a little bit earlier. That said, you see construction crews all the time throwing seed down, like even in the first week of November, and they tend to get something out of that, right? It's not like they get 0% germination. So we tell people, get your seed out by September 30th, because then that basically guarantees that if you do everything else correctly, you're going to get a decent establishment. It's just after September 30th, that's when it's not like all of a sudden magically you're not going to get anything, but that's when we observe that you start having less success if the goal is to have a healthy stand of turf the following spring.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Dr. Wu.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share screen. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the benefits of connecting mowing clippings in pest management. It's quite common that we see in the golf course after mowing, those clippings are left behind. They were not connected. However, there are lots of things can be contained in the clippings. We see that caterpillar pest, the moth, they like to lay eggs, either individually or in clusters, varying with the pest species. They like to lay eggs on either the leaf blade tips or leaf blade in clusters. And so in that way, the clippings can contain quite some of those eggs, either individual eggs or egg masses, depending on species. And also we can say, especially in the morning and also in the late afternoon, the annual bluegrass weevil adults, they can be active on the surface. So the mowing process can remove quite some of that, especially in the short cut grass. And also the mowing can catch some of those other surface active pests, such as change bugs. So it's very important that to connect those clippings, and also do not just dump them right next to the cord. It's not going to make much difference because the pests that are going to return come back. So we shall put them far away and dispose them properly. That may play quite some important role in the mechanical control of some of the turfgrass pests. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu.
Thanks, Dr. Wu, for that information. And I did want to point out that we do recommend removing clippings to remove some of those insects, really only on golf course greens and tees. In the higher cut turfgrass of lawns and sport fields, we recommend returning the clippings back to the lawn. That helps recycle some of the nutrients and keeps our landfills from being filled up with extra green material that's not needed. The next topic that I'd like to discuss is I've been into some discussion with some master gardeners on Facebook, and it's become very obvious that many of them are very negative about lawns. Most of them have said, you know, these lawns are nothing more than a green desert. They're taking up water and resources. We ought to convert them to flower beds and so forth. And I really wanted to address that particular issue. So I'm going to start with a talk that I've given in the past is talking about turfgrass as being a green desert. I think it's really a Lilliputian rainforest is the way that I look at it. I gather my data and my information from a wide variety of studies that have been done, primarily in cool season turf grasses. You can see in Kentucky, New York, here in Ohio, ones that I've been involved with, and I had a graduate student up in Quebec that did some similar studies. Basically, these are what we call non-target studies. We're testing some new insecticides, and the companies want to find out what are all the critters that these pesticides might kill, other than the targets like grubs or chinch bugs or caterpillars. So as you can see, when we do these, there's quite a wide variety of other organisms that are in our turf grass. By far, most of them appear to be mites and little springtails, but quite a bit of other diversity in there. Well, how many of them are there? Well, in our studies, we did 2 studies in 2002 and 3, and then also in 2005. In the first study, we found between 21,000 and almost 31,000 arthropods per square meter. Now, all of these are little tiny things. They're things that are involved in recycling the clippings and breaking down the thatch and the organic matter and so forth. But as you can see, that's a large number of critters in a small area. Now, when we repeated this study in 2005, and this lawn turf that we did the study in, nearly 28,000 and 40 to 45,000 arthropods per square meter. The vast majority of them were mites and springtails, but there were quite a few other critters that were in there. How about other areas? Here's Dan Peck's data from New York. Now, in one study that he did was, 20,000 to 50,000 arthropods compared to our 21 to 45,000 arthropods per square meter. So the reality is turfgrass is not this desert. There's nothing living there. There's a vast array of organisms that are in there, primarily, as I said, recycling things, but there's also predators. They're feeding on each other and so forth. The ants are in there. I also have to kind of chuckle for my butterfly friends. We have 5 species of skipper butterflies. These are the little thick bodied butterflies that you see up flowers. Those butterflies use grasses as their food, and they commonly occur in our turfgrass. Now, some of the pests that we have, as you well know, we have army worms, we've got cutworms, and we've got sod webworms. There's more of the butterflies and moths that are in our turfgrass. So I don't want to spend any more time on it, but I did want to point out that there's a benefit of having turfgrass out there. Now, the next topic that I wanted to discuss, I'm still getting my mass chafers and my light trap, and I'm still seeing a few Japanese beetles around. And so they're still laying eggs, and that means that those eggs won't hatch out until mid-August. What does this all mean? It means that I think if we're going to see some grub damage this year, it's probably going to be later. Over most of Ohio, we appear to be, in general, about 2 to 3 weeks behind in plant development and insect activity and so forth. So get prepared if you're especially in the lawn care or other turf management areas. You may need to do some remedial grub treatments, not in late September, but maybe in October of this year. Ed, that's all I've got for today.
Thank you, Dr. Shetlar. Doing your best despite the issues with your internet connections. We'll see if we have to do some work on that. Again, August 1st, we have the Ohio Turfgrass Foundation Field Day in Columbus. August 2nd, the Ohio Lawn Care Association Field Days in Columbus. Updates on a lot of research activity that's been ongoing, and also some updates on the changes in the facility and new areas of work that we're going to be looking at. All of us that are online today are going to be there, along with Todd Hicks, Pam Sharat, and a couple of our grad students are also involved with some of the projects. If you do have any questions, buckeyeturf@osu.edu is going to be the email. Various social media platforms, so OSU Turf, OSU ATI Turf, and then for podcasts, again, if you want to listen to us drone on in your car, if you can't put up with looking at our made for radio faces, the Turf Team Times will be on various things such as Apple Podcast, and we're also on Spotify. Thank you, Dr. Carr. With that, we will see you all next week, post cool down, hopefully.